minutes late for these. If you're late, if you're watching this later, then that's cool. But make sure you are subscribed to my channel. I'm going to talk about how everybody learned everything ever. Okay, so this is a really important one. It's a really important one. It's going to help you get through the mock exam period that's probably coming your way in a little while, or just generally this year. If you are studying and you are starting to pretty much stress out, then don't be upset about that, because that's normal. That's how everyone feels when anything ever. Right, so this is what I'm really talking about, is whenever you start something, you always go through this kind of dip where you start to feel really quite bad, okay? And this happens with every single person who's learned something new ever. If you think back to things that you just do really easily now, if you think back to when you first learned them, you found them hard and it did not feel good to be put in this place where you're like, wow, can I actually do this? As a teacher, I've been through that, okay? Learning the skills in my classroom to manage the class, to actually plan and teach good, outstanding lessons. And there was a time when I didn't think it was possible. I wondered, can I actually do this? And probably right now, if you're going through GCSE A levels, you're probably in that period of time where you're like, wow, can I actually do this? You have to embrace that. You have to think to yourself, I'm going to embrace that period of time. I'm going to embrace that difficult period. I'm going to make sure that I'm not looking for a comfortable way out. I'm not just going back to a comfortable, easy way of revising. I'm going to keep going. I'm going to challenge myself. I'm going to work at an appropriate level to get these good grades. Okay, so don't be upset if you are going through a period and you're learning where you're thinking, this is really hard, because that's the right period to be at. All right, that's the right period to be at. I'll talk more about that dip in a little while, okay? But I'll just tell you a little bit of a story first. A little bit of a story about a student that I knew who did not find GCSE easy, and actually we put her through a BTEC route in sciences, and she found herself in that BTEC route. She found it really, really hard at first, and she was wondering, can I actually do this? And I remember her being quite upset at her period. When she started to realise that actually she was capable of this, she kind of took off. And she was the highest performing student in the whole school with respect to GCSEs in that year, because she did so well in this science BTEC. She went ahead and she did applied science BTEC level 3. And really about halfway through those 2 years doing the BTEC with me, the BTEC applied science level 2, the GCSE equivalent, about halfway through that she realised I really want to be a nurse. And who did I see at the hospital? Just recently, just over the weekend, I saw this young lady in a blue outfit. She was a nurse. So this is like a 5-year journey, and she got there by this kind of hard work. She got there by embracing that dip. Okay, actually, no, I can appreciate this is harder. This is a difficult period of time. It doesn't feel nice. It doesn't feel good thinking that we can't do something. It doesn't feel nice thinking that we're struggling to do something, especially if other people seem to be doing better. It doesn't feel good. But that is what learning is. So when I say in this video, this is how everybody learned everything ever, then believe me, this is the way that we learn. We go through this period where we can't do something and we come out the other side stronger. So embrace that. When you're studying, when you're revising, make sure you're putting yourself into that situation. If you're not, it's probably not hard enough what you're doing. It's probably not high enough level. If you're not actually struggling, then what are you doing? You're just kind of going over and revising the exact same things again and again and again. You're probably working down at a low taxonomy. You're probably working just at a knowledge and understanding level. And you need to get the highest grade, or to get your best grade, you need to be making sure you're working through that taxonomy, up at the apply, up at the evaluate and create kind of levels, okay? Analyze, evaluate and create kind of levels. So make sure you're challenging yourself to go through that. So here's the thing, right? So you learn a huge amount when you're studying alone, because sometimes it doesn't feel good. It feels like loads of work. Sometimes it feels like, oh, I really can't do this. I'm really on my own and I can't do this. But it's going through that and coming out the other side that's going to make you really, really strong. You learn so much when you're studying alone, because that's the time when you really want to be asking yourself, is this working? I'm not just doing the task that my teacher sets me, but I'm doing the task that I've set myself. And that's a really important thing to do, is to actually do a task you've set yourself and say, is this working? Be evaluative about it. Think to yourself, am I getting anything from this? Am I just putting myself through this boring hour where I'm just copying things out? Or am I actually challenging myself? Am I actually making myself feel a bit uncomfortable because I'm having to work so hard, I'm having to think so hard about this new thing that I'm learning? That's where you need to go. You need to put yourself through that so you can come out the other side really stronger. So when you're learning new skills, you feel like it's difficult, you feel like it's actually quite bad. That is such a hard place to be, but it is how everyone learned everything ever. It's about being that deliberate kind of, you're picking the areas, you're focusing on areas, and you're deliberately learning this area because for you that's a weak area. For you, if you go into that and that question comes up on that area, you are going to struggle with it. So you are filling that gap for yourself. Now you can do this. You must identify those areas. You must find some checklists maybe. Okay, use the contents page, whatever. Find the areas you find weakest. If you're in mock exam period or you're going into it this week, find the areas you find the weakest and work on them. Target them. It won't feel good, right? It won't be comfortable, but it will be good and deep learning. And that's the really, really important point. So I'm going to talk a little bit about metacognition in the next few weeks. I've learned a new word over the weekend. It's called metacognition, and it's a bit like thinking about thinking. But it's really appreciating how you learn. And really, I think that the grade 9 students that I've been interviewing, there's how she got a grade 9 with Sydney from last week, and this week Luke's got his how to get a grade 9, how he got a grade 9, and I've got some interviews with these people as well going up on my school's YouTube channel, and it's really fascinating to hear them speak. And all of them talked about actually independent learning is about finding the areas you find the hardest and targeting them, and really appreciating how you learn and what works for you and what works for individual topics for you. So it might not be the same thing for each topic. Really, I also wanted to talk about a real big example, how everybody learned everything ever. And every single one of you out there, every single person who has been through this, every single person who can walk has been through this, learning to walk. Now, baby Franz, when she was learning to walk, it was quite hard to see actually, because she was quite stressed most of the time. And it didn't start obviously with walking. You have to learn to crawl before you can walk. And I remember seeing this girl, she would get really, really frustrated because she was lying on her stomach and she could kind of belly shuffle a little bit, right? But she could move herself around. She would pretty much do a little circle. And when she figured out that she wanted to go forward, she wanted to be able to go and get things, she would move her legs in such a way, and she would always end up going backwards, quite literally. She was trying to go forward and was going backwards. And I've just thought, well, that's how everyone learns everything ever, right? You're trying to go forward, but actually you end up going backwards. And the anguish on her face and the amount she would cry when she was trying to shuffle herself forward, when she was trying to crawl forward, it was really quite difficult to watch as a daddy. You want to just pick her up and take her to where she wanted to go. But I knew actually she was going through that same thing that we all get when we learn something new. She was going through this dip, this bad feeling of like, can I actually do this? Is this too hard for me? And she went through it, and she came out the other side. And actually, she stood up before she could crawl, and she was stood on her own 2 feet, like only just touching on something and just leaning slight support before she could actually crawl forward. And she did get crawling in the end. She did eventually. What she did was she figured out this kind of method where she'd stand up like this and she'd fling herself forward. So she could move forward by like sitting up and then flinging herself, right? And that was the way that she crawled forward. And so she kind of, she went from that to being able to crawl, basically, this flinging herself forward. But shortly after being able to crawl, she learned to walk. And shortly after, because what did she do next? Well, she stood up and she tried to take these steps. She tried to take these steps and it felt bad again. And she fell over time and time again. It was very difficult for us to watch because she would bump herself, and it was quite difficult. But actually, she forced herself through it and she went and did it. And actually, we all did that. None of us can remember it, but we all did that. If you can currently walk, you did that. You did that period of time. You might have done it in exactly the same way as baby Florence. You might have learned to crawl. You might have crawled around for a long time. Some people become what's called bum shufflers, and they never learn to crawl, but they shuffle along on their bum, and then they stand up and they walk, right? But the point is, you have to figure out a way for yourself through this kind of murky stuff, through this difficult period. But without going into that difficult period, you won't learn the new thing. So if you're doing GCSEs now and you're starting to stress out about it, if you're doing A-levels now and you're starting to stress out about it, then yeah, you're in that difficult period, but it's fine. Feel like it's a good period to be in. You've just got to come out feeling strong and having accomplished what you need to accomplish. I hope that makes sense. We were really celebratory whenever baby Florence did those little bits. Whenever she stood up, whenever she crawled forward, whenever she just gave it a go, we were like, yay, clap, clap, clap. And you know, like we made it kind of like a fun thing, and hopefully your teachers and hopefully yourself, you can find ways to make your revision fun. But you must go through that difficult period. You must go through the kind of like the challenge, the brain, the kind of intense taxing, the kind of intense taxing thought on your brain that really makes you feel quite bad. You have to go through it to come out the other side having learned the thing. Right, I'm going to wrap it up now, but if you guys have got any comments, that'd be interesting, what you think about this. Do you know the kind of dip? Do you know what I'm talking about? Do you know that period in lessons where you're like, oh, what on earth are they going on about? Why is everyone getting this and not me? Do you know that? Do you know that feeling, or am I just kind of making this up? Maybe you're somebody that's been through that and you've actually come out the other side with good exam results, and you can give other people the advice that maybe actually, yeah, it does feel like that when you're something new. But you do go through it, and you do come out the other side. It is really, really difficult, I must say, to see as a teacher, and as I was talking about as a father, it's really difficult to see people in that period of time, and you want to just go over and tell them, you want to tell people, but actually that's not always the most useful thing. The most useful thing is to do it yourself, to be independent, to get through it. And believe me, when you go through this period now of mock exams, when you go through the next period of mock exams, when you go through the final thing, there is only one person that you need to worry about. There's only one person's abilities you need to think about, which is your own. You need to just think about putting your own effort in and getting your own best grade out of it. And I say this quite a lot. There are two grades out there. There is your best grade, because you know you worked hard for that and you can feel proud about that. Or there is the not so good grade, that you know you could have done better if you put more effort in. So believe in yourself, trust yourself, back yourself, even in those difficult times when learning is hard. Okay, you can do this. You can come out there with your best grade. Be thinking, say, metacognition is a really useful thing to find out about, and I will make a video about it. I'll do a proper video rather than a live stream. I might talk about it on a live stream as well. Is actually being aware of your own learning and being aware of where you're up to, and being aware of how helpful the things you're doing are to yourself learning certain topics. Have a little search of that, I would suggest, actually. Metacognition, all right, is a nice thing to do for learning to be evaluative about whether or not your learning is working. Testing the waters, doing not just the note making, but actually how do you test yourself to find out whether you're really getting it or not? Are you doing the practice questions? Are you doing the end of chapter questions? Are you doing the past papers? These are all things that the grade 9 students say works, and it works for the grade 8 students, the grade 7 students, the grade 6s, you know, whatever is their best grade. It works for the grade 3s. If you're challenging yourself, then you're going to get your best grade, and it's not going to feel good, but it's how everybody learned everything ever. All right, thanks a lot for watching, and I'll see you soon.